Hi, folks, and welcome to Plotting for Pantsers. In other words, it's a light guide to plotting techniques for discovery writers. My name is Tycho Dwellis. I am an award winning author of 9 books and counting. I predominantly write fantasy. I have a master's in publishing, and I am here to help you learn how to write more efficiently for your style so that way writing is less of a struggle. We don't like struggling. We want to create compelling narratives that really grip people and keep people going. But we've definitely, if you're, I guess, either a plotter or a pantser, run into issues where it's easy to hit roadblocks, hit writer's block, and then kind of fall off. So if you like to pants, let's figure out how to do it in a way that makes it less painful. So, for those of you who are not familiar with plotting or pantsing, a pantser is a writer who prefers to fly by the seat of their pants, right? They like to discover the story as they write. I used to be a pantser. Now I am a plotter. There are certain things that I like about pantsing, but ultimately, over time, I decided that I liked to plot more, that I could write more quickly if I did plot. Pantsers love spontaneity. Their work tends to be very character driven, which is a good thing, by the way. This should be a note for plotters as well. Your plots should be character driven. All forms of writing should be character driven. So keep that in mind, but pantsers are especially good at this. Pantsers tend to value emotional authenticity. There's a little bit of fun in that rawness of the moment, which is really cool. However, there are a lot of common struggles that come with being a pantser, including mid story burnout, which is something that I see a lot. And this is effectively where a person will start writing a manuscript and then they are super excited about the beginning and the end, but writing the middle is often so intimidating that they just stop. They just give up. They don't know where the story is going, and it leads to that burnout. It can also lead to really bad, inconsistent pacing. That's something that I used to struggle with when I was a younger writer, because I was pantsing all the time. I didn't have good narrative structure. And it can also lead to wandering or unclear endings. This is a little bit difficult to describe as to like what these look like. I'm trying to think of a good example where I was like, wow, the ending is like really, really bad. But it's been a minute since I've read truly a very bad book. Oftentimes these endings just feel incomplete. They feel like there wasn't enough closure. They feel like there were plot holes potentially that weren't wrapped up, or even worse, a combination of both, where just overall the whole thing just isn't very satisfying. So you can still pants. You can pants. The question is how do you do so while still writing a comparative or a compelling novel that doesn't fall into these pitfalls, if that makes sense. So oftentimes the question from people who do not like outlines is why should I plot at all? Right? Oftentimes outlines are seen as incredibly tedious. They're not fun. They're boring. You want to just get into the manuscript. You have this idea you want to write. You know where it wants to go, or so you think. Plotting helps with a couple of very major things. You can avoid writer's block. You can track character arcs more effectively, which makes your character driven fiction even more compelling. And most importantly, you can maintain narrative cohesion. This is going to make your book overall way stronger and way more attractive to both readers or agents if you are trying to pitch to a traditional market. The good news is that you do not need the world's most rigid outline to benefit from structure. An outline is a guide. It's not a checklist, right? You can change the outline at any point if something feels like it's not quite jiving or like you need to be flexible, right? The goal today is to learn how to be flexible in that way, to, I guess, utilize what I would say are good minimalist plot tools that are tailored for you if you are a pantser. So let's figure out what these tools are. Really, as a pantser, don't be afraid of outlines. It's more of a mindset shift to understand how to use these tools. Again, like I said earlier, it's not a map. it's not a blueprint, it's a suggestion, right? That's what these tools are. You can wander, but now you have a general direction for the way that you think that you are going to go. You don't need every single step planned along the way. What you're looking for is major landmarks that you can then follow in order to create an effective story. We want plotting to feel like a tool, not a cage. So let's start with the bare bones structure that I personally think that you need to be able to have in your story in order for it to be structurally compelling, right? This is not talking about whether or not people will actually like it. This talks about whether or not it actually has the bones to physically stand up, right? For me, good structure is just like good scaffolding. If you're building a house and you decide to effectively put stucco onto air, that stucco is going to collapse onto the ground and form a pile of mush. It will not create a house. You have to have some kind of frame underneath it. You have to have some kind of drywall to stop the stucco from literally disintegrating and forming a puddle on the ground, right? Even if you are a pantser, how you decorate the house and where you put the walls is entirely up to you. You just have to have the frame in there, right? The frame includes the 3-act structure. This is going to be the best way to form the simplest and quickest outline. The first act is going to be your beginning or your setup. Who is your protagonist? What do they want? Those two things are the most important thing for you to figure out. And if you do not know what your protagonist wants, you do not have a story. The middle is the confrontation. What is keeping them from getting what they want? Again, if you do not know this information, you do not have a story. Without conflict, there is no narrative, right? Then finally, Act 3 is going to be your end. It's the resolution. What is the cost of them getting what they want, and how did they change along the way? This is where all of the fun pantsing happens, is in Act 2 and Act 3, typically, right? You just kind of let the character do what they want as long as they're heading in the general direction that you need them to go, right? The tip that I would have for this, if you want to just have the world's loosest little one-page outline of all time, is write 1 to 2 sentences for each part before you start. That's a great way to approach this. Another thing that you can use is a tool that I would call anchor scenes. These are the blips on the roadmap, the points of interest that you know you want your character to hit. You just don't know how they're going to get there. You don't know when, you don't know how they fit into your story, but you know that your character is going to convene at some point at this scene, and it has to happen. If you're writing a romance, this could be their very first kiss. If you're writing a drama, this could be a betrayal. If you're writing a pretty classic fantasy, that this is the final battle, right? Things that are the narrative goalposts of your story. You can write these scenes out of order. Nobody is saying that you have to logically and chronologically go through your manuscript from point A to point B. If it helps you write out these major scenes and kind of keep them organized in a folder, do that. Put up sticky notes on the wall and move them and rearrange them like a storyboard artist. You do not have to be stuck in the pretty typical, okay, well, I'm going to start from the moment that my character leaves the house to the moment that they finish their journey and go back home. This is not an Odyssey situation, right? You are free to move things around as you feel like you need to. You can build out the rest of the story and kind of bloom the story around these anchor points. And you even use different colored sticky notes if you want. Use different naming conventions for each of these anchor points, things like that. Certain writing software has really cool narrative tools to help you build these kinds of things depending on what you're looking for, but I find a Word doc or a Google Doc works just fine. And again, sticky notes are great. Pin them to a cork board and leave them. Then rearrange as needed. Another interesting tool that I find, this is especially useful for getting through writer's block. A character compass is a great way to, I guess, formally call it, but honestly, I also like to call this tool the grab your character by the brain and ask them what they want tool. That's literally it. Remember that your character is a human being or some sentient creature and or person. They have their own wants, their own needs, their own flaws, their own desires. They have things that make them inherently compelling as a human or again, a person of a fantasy origin, right? So if you were to close your eyes and think about exactly logically what they would do next, just do that. That's the easiest way to get out of writer's block. And I know that it sounds like it's like, well, if it's so simple, why am I not doing it right now? Because most likely you haven't figured out your character's wants or their flaws, potentially, right? That might be an opportunity to go back and revisit your character development because there may be something missing. There might be a piece missing in terms of how you crafted the character. If you know your character back to front and you were to put them in a situation, you as the writer, maybe you can't figure out how they get out of the situation, the character will know. And it might seem kind of freaky, it might seem kind of crazy, but we're writers, we're all crazy. So just ask the character, what would they do? And what emotional movement drives the story? How are they feeling in that situation? Because even if you have the most cool as a cucumber character in the whole world, if they're presented with something that shatters their entire reality and sense of self, they are going to react differently than they would in a controlled environment, right? Figuring out what is going on in the situation and how they would logically react will drive the story in a compelling way. Also, too, it makes it more authentic, in my opinion. And then finally, if you absolutely have to, you can break it down into micro outlines. Again, these can be the most naked outlines you've ever seen in your life. They do not have to be these detailed paragraph, chunky, paragraph by paragraph outlines. Only outline what you need. If your character is in a mini arc and they need to be able to, again, get from one of those anchor points to another, and you need help bridging that gap, figuring out what's happening in the middle of it, just write it out. And having these mini arcs can be also helpful in terms of creating small climaxes within your rising action as well. These small climaxes will create more of an impactful set of tension ramping up as we get into the climax in your story that will prevent your readers from getting bored. So it's kind of a useful way to work around that issue as well. You can break your story down into chunks, goals, obstacles, emotional shifts, and it's great for checking in without spoiling the spontaneity of your work. And then finally, this is the hardest method for me. I personally do not like doing this unless I'm writing a mystery. There are certain genres that literally require this kind of an outline, and I would say any kind of a detective novel or a mystery novel is going to be that thing. But you can always write your outline in reverse. And this doesn't necessarily mean going all the way to the end and then writing all the way back to the beginning. This could also mean writing a scene and then going, okay, how did we get here? Okay, how did we get there? Okay, how did we get there? Okay, how did we get there? And then just going back and back and back and back and back until, surprise, you make it back to the beginning. And then all of a sudden your book's done. And then, we pop a confetti popper and it's very cool. Um, After you're writing a scene, you can also write a sentence or two that summarizes what just happened and then move backward again from there. This will help you track plot threads, pacing, character arcs, those kinds of things that happen. And it also can be kind of helpful for future revisions too. So you can either take notes and then move forward, or you can write and then move backward. It really just depends on how you like to flow and what you like to do with your outline. But having these little notes is very useful. I know certain authors use note cards to be able to do that, and that can be really useful, especially to avoid plot holes, because if a character sets their jacket down somewhere and you forgot, that can be very awkward. So sometimes reverse outlining is very useful for remembering, what's going on. Or it's like, they met that shopkeep back in chapter 2 and I don't remember what their name was. If you have that little sticky note, you will remember. So let's do an exercise. For this exercise, build an anchor scene. Write one paragraph of a major moment that you know will happen in your work in progress manuscript. The questions to guide you are: who is there? What is at stake? What changes? Then, once you have that, all you have to do is write out a couple of bullet points. This does not have to be a beautifully written prose paragraph, right? Grab it on a note card or put it in a Word document. Quick little thing, bullet it out. And then that's it. That's how you can craft your entire story that way, using those things as your major landing points for your story. You can build as many or as few as you need for your manuscript if this helps you kind of leapfrog from place to place. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Pantsing is a lot of crossing your fingers and hoping that you don't get swept out to sea. I personally don't like writing that way, but respect people that do. The main thing to watch out for really is just making sure you do have cohesion. Ultimately, get people to read your work. So if you feel like you're confused or like you don't know where to take the story, or you're worried that your plot is all over the place, the best thing that you can do is have an alpha reader or someone who just has the time, knows your work, and is going to give you valuable feedback. Go through your stuff and look it over, give it a once over. I know professionals like myself do that. It's called developmental editing, and it can be very, very useful for when you're working on your novel. But even having close writer friends look over it and just make sure you're not crazy can also be a massive help. You can plot. I believe in you. You just are going to do it differently than everybody else. Having the right tools in your tool belt it's going to be essential for you to be able to create some kind of structure inside your manuscript. Just remember to listen to your characters, really develop them on the front end, so that way when you put your VR goggles on and are looking through your character's head, you know exactly where to go, because they already know exactly where to go, right? Trust the process. You know best, your characters know best. And the thing is even when you get to the end of this novel, the manuscript itself, you have time to edit it. It's not like you're going to write this thing down and then it's like sealed in stone and no one will ever be able to undo it, right? We have word processors now. We can go back and edit again and again and again until the thing is polished and the pass makes sense, right? So don't be afraid. Just do it. So, because I pre-recorded it, there are currently there's nobody in here to ask questions. However, if you have questions for me about how to write outlines, what is a developmental edit, how do I develop my characters, anything, literally anything, drop them in the comments below. I will be happy to try and answer them in a couple of YouTube shorts if I can, or maybe I'll do one big Q&A video. That's totally valid as well. I'd be curious to see if you need help with anything and see if I can be of any help. So thank you so much for popping into this presentation. Hopefully you learned something, and if not, then I did my job wrong. So feel free to send any questions to me via DM on any of my active social media or leave them in the comments below. You can find me and where all of my books are at tychodorian.com. Good luck writing, and I'm sure that even if you are the best plotter in the world or the best pantser in the world, whatever you create is going to be unique. It's going to be fun, and people are going to have a great time reading it. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.